Welcome to a brand new episode of the Car and Bike Show. I am Siddharth Vinayak Partnkar, and boy, do we have a whole lot packed into today's episode. I hope you had a great festive season. We are starting off with a brand new generation of a car from Maruti Suzuki. Yes, this is the new Celerio, and it brings with it a whole lot of big claims as well as some new features for the first time in this model family. I'll run you through some of that right through today's show, but we get to a massive top story first. The Mahindra XUV700. Yes, that juggernaut rolls on. Huge numbers in bookings, lots of popularity, and now a massive fillip to that story from a great rating from Global NCAP. Yes, crash test time. CarAndBike was the only one present at the actual test. Here is an exclusive report. It is a very special report we bring you today on Car and Bike. You'd remember that Mahindra made a claim a few years ago that all its new models will always have a basic safety standard, nothing below 4 stars, ideally 5 stars on all cars. Today we test that claim on its latest absolute blockbuster of a model, the XUV700. We are at ADAC's Crash Test Lab just outside of Munich in Landsberg. Yes, the flagship is being tested and in every way possible. This is a sponsored test, meaning that the company has paid for the tests, but Global NCAP has procured the cars independently from series production. And its test protocol will be thoroughly followed. The XUV700 is being prepared like any car with lots of wires, cameras and sensors inside and out that will measure every data point of the impending crash. So things are pretty much set up now. As you can see, it's all sort of wired in, all the preliminary steps that have to be put into place before the test can actually happen. All of that's done. So it's just a last couple of things left to do, and then we're going to see the action, the actual frontal crash test, and of course the result after that. The car is now pulled back to the other end of the room from where it will travel at speed for the crash. The crash test dummies used are always of a standard average weight and height specification for all tests in a particular protocol. The rear seat has child dummies placed inside child seats. This is in compliance with the same CRS or child restraint systems that the manufacturer recommends for the particular vehicle. And yes, the car will be crashed at 64 kilometers per hour under Global NCAP protocols. Now, as you know, the Global NCAP test protocol, like any other NCAP test protocol, always uses the base variant of any model, because then, of course, the safety rating applies to the entire range. So you'd wonder, why is this then the AX3 and not the MX? Well, don't worry, we've got you covered on that. Simply put, in terms of safety equipment, build quality, even things like the wheels, the two are identical, so the rating will still apply. The engineers make sure everything is in place and then get down to applying color-coded wet paint on the dummies at strategic positions on their body. The idea is to visually analyze the impact any body part makes with any section of the car's cabin or equipment. So it is time. All preps are done and the stage is set for yet another Made in India car to be crash tested. Here we go. Organizing a test can take months, shipping the car takes weeks, and prepping takes a few days. But the test itself takes mere seconds. All right, so the crash has just happened and they're going to do a few of their initial checks. We can't go in just yet, but once we can, we'll go closer. But you can start to already see what part of the car has taken all of the brunt of that crash, as it were. So of course, I'm not going to make any claims here because I'm not the expert, but just going by the number of crash tests we've been here for and witnessed, you can see that what's supposed to happen is that the car is supposed to take most of that impact ahead of the passenger cabin. It appears to be the case, isn't it? You can see that most of the damage is centered around here. It hasn't really traveled too much behind what the A-pillar joint would be. And so, like I said, we still don't know. If you come in close, you're going to see some of the gas still escaping and hissing out of the airbag. And all right, even at the back, I'm not seeing paint splotches all over the place, which is always a good sign. And remember, the technical analysis of all of this, there's a lot of data crunching. It's not something that I can tell you happens in 2 or 3 minutes. It's not like, oh, we're going to know the result now. That's something that always takes some doing because the result has to be accurately measured. We will leave the safety lab engineers to the analysis and data crunching, but time to shift our focus to the second test. Yes, a second test, this time for side impact. So the idea of a side impact is of course a little bit different from the frontal one, simply because it's a different kind of energy absorption that the vehicle needs to do, and the idea clearly always being to protect the occupants. So the initial analysis looks good. The car seems to have done quite well, and given again some of the claims that we've heard from the company, I suppose that shouldn't come as a surprise. Remember that a side impact test is necessary if you're going for 5 stars.
With this car, well, at least the side impact protection was performing pretty good. I mean, passing comfortably the regulatory requirements. From the frontal assessment, we could also notice from at least the first view of results and the first, let's say, round of raw information, the car is looking pretty good in terms of the biomechanics of the occupants. We have also seen very roughly from the outside, the structure seems to be a stable structure as well.
And so here are the scores. Another 5-star success story from Mahindra. No surprise really, given the initial visual look I had at the car, as also the in-depth deep dive I had done with Mahindra's engineering and development team in Chennai in August. The total score for adult occupant protection is 16.03 of a maximum 17, putting the XUV700 amongst the highest 5-star ratings. Its body shell is also rated as stable. No marginal, weak or poor scores for injury parameters to the dummies too. And the XUV700 has also scored very well for child safety with a comfortable 4 stars. In fact, the highest score achieved thus far by an Indian-made car for child safety. 41.66 of a maximum 49 points shows fair to good protection for both the 18-month-old and 3-year-old child dummy. On the whole, having seatbelt pre-tensioners and reminders, ISOFIX child seat anchorage, ABS or anti-lock brakes, dual front airbags as standard helped the score. Some of these are required by law, but not all. Higher variants have side and curtain airbags and even a driver knee airbag for the top spec. Speaking of which, though not required as a part of the test protocol or indeed for the 5-star rating, since the AX7 variant offers ADAS or Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, Global NCAP decided to test the automatic emergency braking or AEB on the car. And so it took the top variant out to the Penzing Air Base near Landsberg, and the car's ADAS systems were put on test. We are happy to report that the XUV700 passed with flying colors.
We think that these technologies are definitely the ones that are going to be leading in the next decade of action to reduce or dramatically reduce all what is called injuries and fatalities as well in the vulnerable road users. The AEB system, it's not only for hitting another car. It can prevent also detecting or detects a vulnerable road user, a pedestrian, and the vehicle can stop if you don't do it on time.
The Mahindra XUV700 is the company's second 5-star safety rated car. It joins the XUV300 and Tata Punch, Altroz and Nexon as the only made-in-India cars to achieve the 5-star distinction. So huge news for the XUV700, and that car is just going to get more popular now, I'm sure. I promise you more on the Celerio. Now, remember, the car comes in at a time when you've got a lot more as standard when it comes to safety. So you've got dual airbags and you've got ABS and things like that, of course, which is a good thing. And besides that, you've also got a top-end version now that boasts some features that have trickled into this segment. So you've got the Smart Play Studio touchscreen interface, of course. You've also got a start-stop button, power window switches, for the front up here and for the rear down here. So that's the other thing. You've got AMT, like I was mentioning earlier. You have few variants with that option as well. This is the top end version, and prices, well, start at 4.99 lakh rupees and go up to 6.94 lakhs. So just under 7 lakh rupees for the top end variant. With that, let's take a short break. I'll come back and I'll tell you what the big headline on this car is. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Celerio. I did promise you the big headline. India's most fuel-efficient car ever. 26.6 kilometers to the litre on this K10 petrol. That is what Maruti is claiming, and that is a huge headline, isn't it? Especially at a time when fuel prices have been skyrocketing. Besides that, you get a few new features, like I said. Interesting little button here. That is a keyless entry button on the top end. And that's how you get in. Of course, the key can stay in your pocket. Now we move on to another huge exclusive. This is a review of a car that becomes a flagship for brand Kia. The EV6. It's the first dedicated electric model from Kia. It is one that would be considered for India, and it also points both in terms of direction and styling where Kia is headed. Very significant car and an exclusive review for you. Kia's first dedicated EV or electric vehicle. The first of many to come, as Kia says. So as that brand new electric flagship, the Kia EV6 needed to be very good. And it is. I am driving it today in Germany, where it has already picked up a lot of buyer interest. Now the 6 in the name, of course, tells you that Kia's family of born electric vehicles will all be called EV something. And this is the EV6, which also tells you that there's going to be a bunch of them because, of course, there's going to be a lot of them going forward. Built on the Hyundai Motor Group's new Electric Global Modular Platform or EGMP, the EV6 shares a lot with its Hyundai alter ego, the Ioniq 5. Its looks are its own though. The design team went for a crossover look, and which is why many call this an SUV. To me, it's more a large hatch, or yes, a crossover. A modern face, smooth flanks, and a rear that is especially expressive. The flared out fenders at the back are inspired by the Lancia Stratos from the 1970s. It has deployable door handles that sit flush with the body. Overall, this is the first car that displays Kia's new Opposites United design language. And you really see that in the rear taillight housing and styling. But along with that new design language, you still get some familiarity because Kia's Tiger Nose grille is here. It's been reinterpreted, but it's very much here. And it is also the first model to have the new Kia logo right from word go. We do know that logo well enough now. The car is just as sharp and modern looking on the inside. Clean cabin design dominated by dual 12.3-inch curved screens up front. The graphics are very nicely done, and the car gives you the right blend of information that you need and a techie, cool quotient. Connectivity, head-up display, ambient lighting, all of that is a given, I suppose. The floating central console is also cool and gives you wireless charging for your phone. Now the car's drive mode button is here on the steering wheel. I like that, it's very convenient. Usual drive modes, there's Eco, Normal and Sport, and then if you long press that button you get the Snow mode. Not using that today. The names are evident, but interestingly the Eco mode, well, the car also takes into account its own onboard cameras, any obstacles in the way. It also tracks what's happening with the navigation system, even if you're not following a destination, just to know what sort of topography lies ahead, and then gives you the most efficient use of the battery and the throttle. So, of course, saves most power. You put it into sport mode, things get mental, and that's nice. It also stiffens up, which is also good. No change in damping, but you do have a nice stiff steering in that sort of a scenario. But what is nice is that it also sounds a little bit different. I kind of like that. The sport mode is indeed very responsive. It is pretty much where I stayed the entire afternoon. I had the chance to take the car out on 2 runs, so I did try the other modes too. The EV6 has a claimed range of 394 to 528 kilometers for the models sold in Germany. Drive in city mode alone, and that goes even higher. The top spec EV6 GT with 584 bhp is coming soon. That has the lower end of drive range but highest end of the performance. With me today is the GT line variant. It has a 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery and a 320 bhp output. Torque is 605 Nm. A 2-motor setup means all-wheel drive is standard. The entry EV6 in Germany gets a 58 kilowatt-hour setup with the same output but reduced driving range. Top speed on both is 185 kilometers per hour, though the GT will have 260 kilometers per hour. The EV6 handles well and has a terrific weighted steering. The car feels engaging and keeps you interested all the time. Now, being the very first dedicated EV from Kia, this car had to be a flagship. It really had to stand for everything that the company has achieved in terms of its R&D, in terms of its capability, its technology. And so it's really loaded with everything from driver assistance systems to, of course, safety, and even very fine detail on things like material quality, the screens. All of that has been paid a lot of attention to, and that's very obvious. The big question you're asking is, why should you care? Will the EV6 come to India? The simple answer is yes, but it won't happen for at least 12 months. Kia India is looking at the introduction of an EV model, and we know it will be a born electric car, so that rules out the likes of the Soul EV. The EV6 makes the most sense from the point of view of shape, size, segment, attribute, and levels of luxury and tech, and also what it will do for the brand image. But it will remain a niche flagship as it starts at over 45,000 euro, even in Europe, making it ideal for only a few. The EV6, you have to react to that. Please leave us a comment on our YouTube page in case you logged in to this show just a little bit late. You're going to want to see that review from the very start. With that, I'm going to say goodbye. Tell me how you like the styling and some of the attributes we talked about on the new Celerio. This color, by the way, is called Speedy Blue. Yes, of course, I like it. And with that, I will say goodbye. Please react to all of this. Please wear your seatbelts. Please wear your helmets. And please join me next week. We have another exclusive lined up for you on the show next week. Bye-bye.